Hello, friends. We are on chapter 8 of 2 Corinthians. We've been working through this book, and now we've come to the place through chapter 8 and chapter 9. He's going to be talking concerning finance. He's going to be talking about money and supporting Jerusalem, supporting the poor saints. Let me just kind of give a little bit of background here. Paul made 3 great trips where he really took the gospel around the world. I mean, it was just amazing the places that he went. On his 3rd journey, he takes a collection from the Gentile churches and he wants to take that finance back to support the people in Jerusalem, which is kind of a missions work in reverse, if I could say it like that. Jerusalem, the home church, usually supports the outreaches of those in other places. But now Paul's going to these other places and saying, you guys need to now take part in supporting and undergirding the church in Jerusalem because of what they're going through. Now, some of the things that they were going through, they went through some real poverty and some financial difficulties. And there's a couple of possibilities of what could have happened to the church in Jerusalem. It is believed that many of the jobs were temple-oriented at that particular time, but the problem is that it was run by the Sadducees. Now, the temple that was run by the Sadducees, of course, the Sadducees, they don't believe in the resurrection, they don't believe in miracles, they don't believe in angels. And the problem with that was the fact that the early church singular message was that Jesus had raised from the dead. The Sadducees did not believe so Christians were completely cut out of anything whereby they had received any kind of income, and it caused some real poverty. The Sadducees were in charge of the financial market in relation to the temple. And another possibility is the fact that there was a famine that hit very hard. If you'll read in the 11th chapter of the book of Acts, Agabus had prophesied a famine that was going to come into the Mediterranean and that was going to have a tremendous effect upon Israel, upon Jerusalem. And so it's very possible that the combination of the famine, of the loss of jobs, of whatever the case was, nonetheless, they were in trouble financially. And I want to say that you bear a responsibility for the people around you. I want to say this, you're not expected to have a Messiah complex. It's not up to you to carry the load. It's not up to you to do everything. But you can do your part. And that's what Paul was talking to all of these people about. And he came to the churches of Corinth and he began to talk to them about their responsibilities. And he talked a little bit about how God looked upon finance and how and the part that this finance played in our life. So let's look at chapter 8 and verse 1. He said, "And now, brothers and sisters, we want you to know about the grace that God has given to the Macedonian church." Okay? What is this grace? He said, in the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. Now, these people were going through a heck of a time themselves. I mean, what he calls severe trial. And in the midst of that severe trial, overflowing joy. Isn't that amazing? Joy is not dependent upon your circumstances. We might refer to the word happiness is dependent. Actually, happiness is an old English term that we use that has to do with the happenings. What happened to you, therefore I'm happy. In other words, my level of whether I'm up or whether I'm down depends on what happens to me. Okay? But joy isn't like that. You know, you can be happy or you can be unhappy. But there's no such thing as having joy or unjoy. I mean, that doesn't even make sense, does it? Because joy is not dependent upon your surroundings, but joy is something that is a part of your spirit. Is the joy? The Bible said the joy of the Lord is my strength. So my strength doesn't vacillate depending on my circumstances. So whether I'm happy, whether I'm not happy, I think we put too much emphasis on trying to be happy, because that means you're trying to line up all of your circumstances. And these poor people here, they said in the midst of severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty. I mean, how do you mix that together? They're walking in joy in the midst of challenges, in the midst of difficulties, of extreme poverty. It says it welled up in rich generosity. So the joy of the Lord will cause something to be activated in your spirit that will cause a belief to come up, a generosity to come up. And he said in verse 3, he said, "For I testify that they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability." In the midst of their trial, in the midst of the poverty that they were facing, they still dug in and gave something. They couldn't do everything, but it said they did as much as they gave, as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own. I wasn't pressuring them. They heard about the need. Something within them welled up. The joy of the Lord welled up on the inside of them. They said, "I want to be a part of that solution. I want to help." And even if it pinches, and sometimes I wonder, we talk about some people saying, I'm a giver. Sometimes being a giver, like we're talking about, it's not really giving until it costs you something. I'm not saying hurt you, but cost you something. There's a lot of people, they're only going to give provided it doesn't cost them anything. I mean, it's kind of giving, if I can take that off my taxes, I'll give. But I wonder if they can't take it off their taxes, would they give it all? So the giving that these people, they were moved toward it. I wonder sometimes, are we not moved toward the needs of other people? That something rises up in us that we just simply say, you know what? We're going to have to really cut it close around here. But I want to give just a little extra because there's a need that is there that I want to help. Giving should always be a part of your life. I want to encourage you to do something today, and we'll get on with this lesson. You should always set aside a portion of what you have, not everything, but a portion of what you have to give to the poor. You should always be able to reach into the needs of someone else when you see them. I'm not trying to do everything, and I don't give. I see people on the street corner. I don't give to everybody like that. I try to listen to my heart in giving, and not just because there's some of those people that are just professionally out there. Some of them, they don't want to do anything else. But then there are legitimate needs. And I know some people have said, well, I'm not giving to anybody that's out on the corner. I understand that. You can kind of get jaded from it. You can get to the place where you just think everybody's just out to take something. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because sometimes there are legitimate needs. And like I said, even $1. I mean, geez, come on, guys. To give to the poor, is $1 going to hurt you? What are you going to go buy with $1? Seriously, what are you going to go buy? Is there something that you feel like if you gave $1 to someone that was begging or for asking for help, do you think that's really going to cripple you to the point? Well, it's just the principle of the thing. I know, because we have been jaded by those who have masked themselves as in need. But again, if I could use this term, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes there are legitimate needs, and you got to listen to your heart. And these people, they were moved. It said in verse 3, it said they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own. This is the churches of Macedonia who saw giving as an opportunity, and they did beyond their ability with joy. Now, again, if I could just, before we leave that thought, if I could just give another quick point about giving. There should be an element of sacrifice in your giving. It should cost you something. I can't help but think of when David, he bought the threshing floor. He was going to sacrifice to God to stop the plague that had come upon the land. And he bought this threshing floor from Onan, and he said, I need this. And Onan just said, take it. I'll give it to you. And David said this. He said, I'll not sacrifice to the Lord that which costs me nothing. I'm not going to do that. See, that's a principle. There should always be in our giving an element of sacrifice. And again, please hear my balance here, because I'm not saying give it. Some people, they're so out of balance that they just try to give away everything they've got. That's not God's plan. God wants you to have enough for you and your family and your future. He wants all of those things. But shame on us that we can't set aside just a portion of what we have. Even if we have to tighten our belt from time to time because of our giving to someone else, giving to those that are in need, giving to the poor. You cannot believe how that affects them. You can take the meanest old snot in the whole world, just this old grouch, and when he's in trouble and you go and you take a load of groceries to his house and give to him, or you give him something, suddenly that mean old thing suddenly turns, and you see the underbelly of his heart, and you see the kind of the sensitive side where somehow a door's been opened. Giving to people opens doors to them, which opens the door to share Christ with them. You know, Jesus was so known for giving that at the Last Supper, whenever he spoke to Judas and said, what you do, go do quickly, because he was going to go betray him, they thought, all of the guys thought, that Jesus told him about going to give to the poor. They thought that he was doing it. Jesus was so known for giving that he was constantly, go give to this one, go give to that one, go help. I mean, because it is a principle that should be a part of your life. And David said, I'm not offering to God something that didn't cost me nothing. So let that element of sacrifice just weigh in just a little bit. You know, the woman that put the 2 mites in the offering, Jesus was there watching the offerings. And it said that Jesus made a statement concerning this woman with 2 mites that is about as small as you can possibly get. This woman and a lot of these other people said they were giving of their abundance into the treasury. Well, I've got $100,000 here. Let me put $100 in for you. Let me put $1,000 in. It didn't hurt them. I mean, that's just almost to them, if I can say it like this, almost chump change. But this woman gave all she had. Jesus saw that. Jesus saw that. I wonder what happened to that woman that day. I wonder what Jesus did for her. And because Jesus said, this woman gave more than all of those guys. I don't care. They gave $1 million. It don't matter. This woman gave more than them because she gave sacrificially. There was something about the element of sacrifice that they gave out of their abundance. That the element of sacrifice is so important. So now, anyway, back to the point. That's how these Macedonians were given. They were giving as a sacrifice. They were giving as much as they could and a little beyond, according to their ability and beyond their ability. That's just so powerful. I mean, it really is. I'd like you just to let that soak in just for a moment, because these Macedonians, they were, even though they were in trouble themselves, they were facing poverty themselves. They said, we can do something. We can't do everything, but we can do something. And that should be our heart always, because there are people around us. Let me just tell you something. You may think you're an island to yourself, but you are not. Those around you go down, you're going to take a dip yourself. It's important that we maintain the quality of life and the level of grace for those around us as much as for ourselves. Okay? And I think too often people just, they look at their possessions they don't want, and they say, well, we don't need that. We don't need that. Let's give it to the church. We've had so much junk given to the church that people didn't want. I don't want that. Let's give it to the church. And that's kind of the mentality that a lot of people have had. You know, I don't need that. Let's just Give it to God. Israel, whenever they were going to offer a lamb, you know what they were told? They said, "I want you to find the best lamb, find the best grain, find the best fruits, the first fruits." That's important. And your giving will say more about you as a person than anything else. I can go through your checkbook and I can find out where your priorities are, what your love is, what your focus is, what your desires. I see all of that just simply by looking at what you do with your money. Maybe you should evaluate that. Let me ask you something. How often do you give to the poor? How often do you give to the church? Now, I use the churches as an example because that truly is the house of God. It's the place where we come to collectively worship. And it's a place that is set apart and sanctified to worship God, a sanctuary unto the Lord. It's something that's very holy. And I'll tell you something. It's kind of like what I was reading last night concerning Jacob. When the place he called Bethel, he said, this is the place of God. This is the place of a holy God. This is the gateway to heaven. No, he said, this is the church of God. This is the gateway to heaven. And I believe that the church is just that. And of course, please, and let me preface this. Obviously, we are the temple of the Holy Ghost. Yes, the gateway to heaven is our faith. But don't just poo-poo what's happening with the church. The collective body, when they come together, it's something special. And through that collection of believers that come together, there's a unity and there's a power that's unmatched. I mean, it's wonderful. And suddenly they get together with their faith and they're worshiping and they're praising and they're giving of themselves financially and they're giving to support the missions outreach. The missions, our missions department, they reach places that maybe I would never think about reaching. I mean, they're reaching places all over the world. They're keeping up with the needs. We've got missionaries that we support here and here and here and have been doing that for years. And even though I probably will never wind up going to those places, we want to support those that are because they're in need. And it's important that you learn to support your church. Give to you. Come on. Are you kidding me? Give to the church. Because the church is doing something that's broader than just we're singing 2 songs and preaching a message and telling you how to be better. It's operating as a collective hive where people can come together and be fed and be ministered to and be counseled and be discipled. We need the church. We need the local church. We don't need less of them. We need more of them. Stop being in competition with the churches down the road. Dear God, support them because there's people, as much as I would love everyone to come to my church, you know they're not going to. And that's okay because many of them, they don't belong there. This isn't their assignment. And I don't have the facilities to handle it. So I need to pray for the first church and the second church and the one down the road. I need to pray that those churches are successful for the sake of the gospel of Jesus Christ. As long as they're preaching Christ, of his birth, his sinless life, his death, his burial, his resurrection, if they're doing that, then I'm all for them. We need to pray that all of those. So be supportive of the church because there's a mindset taking place right now across this country that is very anti-church. I don't go to church. And people getting this, I got hurt in church. Sometimes I think if I hear that one more time, I want to hurt that person. I just want to sock them right in the nose. I think what a pitiful excuse. And that's all it is. You were hurt in church? Please, come on. You're going to get hurt in the grocery store. You're going to get hurt on the softball team. There's somebody there that's going to hurt your feelings. They're going to cut you cheap. They're going to whatever. Come on, your relationship isn't just with the church. Your relationship is with Christ. That's where you keep your eyes focused. And when people talk about that, I'm saying it isn't a matter that you had a problem with the church. You have a problem in your focus with Christ, because you keep your eyes on him, and it doesn't matter what people do. They come, they go, whatever. Come on. He will keep you online. So be supportive. Don't give the church the last thought. Make it a priority. Take your family to the house of God. Raise your children in the house of God. I heard someone say the other day, well, I don't want to take my children because I want them to decide for themselves. I thought, really? Okay, let me ask you something. Are you letting them decide what their bedtime is? No, they're not old enough. Are you letting them decide what they eat? No, they're not old enough. Are you letting them decide whether or not they want to go to school? Well, of course not, because they're lazy and they don't want to go and they're not old enough. Or are you letting them decide what they want to wear? Well, I will occasionally give them room, but if they get really weird, no, I'm not going to let them. Why in the world would you take the most important, heavy, spiritual aspect of a person's life and say to a little 5-year-old, I don't want them to be influenced, I want them to make up their own mind? How can they know if you don't teach them about spiritual things and spiritual connection and worship unto God? If you don't teach them and introduce them to something that allows, because to receive spiritual things, that is done by the yielding of the heart. I heard about that and I received it. That's how you receive that. But if they don't hear about it, well, what are they going to hear? Because I promise you, you go into the educational system nowadays that's being presented to us, especially the college system, you're going to hear nothing but people that are atheistic in their teaching and believing, and they're undermining a relationship with God. Are you going to let them be influenced by that? They're not making their decision then. That professor is making their decision for them. So come on, let's put priorities back on the house of God, back on the church, and be a part of that. Now, of course, that's a bunny trip. Well, I'll tell you what, I took off on that one like crazy, didn't I? But the fact is that these people gave the best they had, and they gave it to the church that was in need, to the people that was in need. And so I think this is important that you make the decision to let that be a priority in your life. Okay? Come on. Let's grow up and take our place. And part of that place is that we are givers. Now, verse 4 said, they urgently, these people here, it said, let me see here. Verse 3, I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own. And verse 4 said, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the Lord's people. I mean, it was almost like they had to be restrained. They urgently pleaded us. We want to be a part of this thing. Come on, don't cut us out on this. This is a blessing. This is a part we want to be a part of. That's what they were saying. And it said in verse 5, they exceeded our expectations. Dear Lord, it said they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then by the will of God also to us. Now that's the sequence in which it has to happen. They gave of themselves first to the Lord. That's what I'm doing. I'm giving the Lord myself. I'm giving him first. I give him my all. And then, by the will of God, also to us. So that's the way that you do this. You know, first of all, give yourself to God. When it comes to your giving to other people and other needs, first of all, commit yourself to God. Give yourself to the Lord first. And then he's going to show you his will in what you're supposed to do. And he'll do it. You give yourself to the Lord. You're all of his. You all belong to him. You are stewards over everything you have. You don't own anything. You don't. It's borrowed. It's borrowed. I'm using it while I'm here. You know, it's kind of like the two guys standing by the grave of the very rich man, and the one said, I wonder how much he left. And the other one said, all of it. In other words, he didn't take anything with him. And so, I'm a steward. What I'm doing is borrowed. So I want to first turn my heart to God, and then I want to say, Lord, what's your will in what I do here and what I do there? So, as a result of all of that, that's a whole mouthful there. Sorry about that if I took us out too far. But verse 6 said, so we urge Titus, just as we had earlier made in the beginning, to bring also a completion So we urge Titus, just as we had earlier made in the beginning, to bring also to completion this act of grace on your part. In other words, we don't want to just talk about this. We don't want to just make plans for this. Let's be a finisher. Let's bring this act of grace that you're giving now to completion. It's time now to put your money where your mouth is. He said, but since you excel in everything, now look at this in verse 7, he's talking to these Corinthians, you excel in everything. He said, you excel in faith, you excel in speech, you excel in knowledge, you excel in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you. Then he said this, he finishes those statements. He said, you guys are very gifted, very, very gifted. But he said, now I want you to see that you also excel in this grace of giving. This is very important. What he was talking about is that the grace of giving here is as important as the grace of faith and the grace of knowledge and the grace of all of these other things, the grace of giving. So he said, I want you to excel now, just as you did these others, in this grace of giving. 1 Corinthians, he made the statement, he said, you guys come behind and no gift. I mean, these people were gifted like crazy. He said, now verse 8, he said, I'm not commanding you, but I want you to test the sincerity of your love by comparing it with the earnestness of others. I mean, they didn't have the money to do what you do. They don't have the money that you have, but their sincerity was incredible. The earnestness of their heart was incredible. And he said, I want you just to test the sincerity of your love by comparing it to the earnestness of those people. He said in verse 9, he said, for you know that the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you through his poverty might be made rich. That was the ultimate example for us. It was the giving of Jesus, the giving of himself. Well, I love that. You know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, though he was, I mean, literally, I mean, he was before Adam. The Godhead, the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, the King of kings. Though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor. He took the lowest seat, born of a couple that didn't even have enough to buy a lamb to sacrifice. They had 2 turtle doves. Whenever you don't have a lamb, you didn't have enough, then it said you could also offer 2 turtle doves. And that's what they offered. What that said was they didn't have any money. And Jesus was born into that. He was born in a manger. He was born. But he said he took that place to impact you. 2 Corinthians 5:21, he who knew no sin became sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. So he became poor so you could become rich. You understand that? Wow. And then he said in verse 10, and here is my judgment about what is best for you in this matter. He's just saying, this is my advice, okay? This is what I think you should do. He said, last year, last year you were the first not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. You jumped on that like crazy. And then he said this, verse 11, now finish the work. He said, last year you guys were on fire to do this. You were wanting to be a part of helping here and helping there. And we talked about this. And he said you had the desire to do so. So verse 11 says, so finish the work. Follow through on your commitment that you made a year ago, so that your eager willingness to do it might be matched by your completion of it according to your means. Wow, that is incredible. Verse 12 says this, for if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable, according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. If the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable. And it doesn't matter whether you have a lot or whether you have a little. It's not according to what you don't have. Well, if I only had $1 million, well, I'd do something. That's not what he's looking for. What do you do with what you have? I'm thinking of that story of Moses, that time that he was in the wilderness and God told him to go set the children of Israel free. And, so he started making excuses. And God said to him, what do you have in your hand? And he said, well, it's just a rod. See, God never uses things you don't have. He uses what you have. Don't make the excuse, boy, one of these days, if I could just win the lottery. How many times have we heard that? Man, I'll tell you what, if I could win the lottery, you guys would have no more problems. But the problem is you don't ever win the lottery and you don't ever give. You don't ever take the step out of where you are toward the needs of someone else. And he said in verse 13, he said, our desire is not that others might be relieved while you are hard pressed, but that there might be equity, equality. In other words, it should be both ways. I don't want them to suffer and you have plenty, but I don't want you having to suffer and them having plenty. There should be equality. In other words, you should be expecting that they prosper as much as you prosper. And he said, at the present time, verse 14, your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn, their plenty will supply what you need. Again, the goal is equality. As it is written, verse 15, as it is written, the one who gathers much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Of course, he's quoting from Acts chapter 16, where God made manna, and he said, get enough for today. And if you had too much, it'll begin to decay. So he said, if you have too much, give it to those that are around you, because it's going to decay. So anyway, he is at this point now going to go into verse 16. So Titus basically is sent to receive this collection. Guys, Titus is coming to pick it up. We talked about this last year. Pull your stuff together. Come on, man. We need to do this. Follow through. So he said in verse 16, thanks be to God who put it in the heart of Titus the same concern I have for you. It's already in his heart. He didn't have to be told what to do. He was available, and he saw something that seemed to fit his gift mix. God's work is always available to you. Are you available to God's work? This was just in the heart of Titus. There's a lot of people who are sitting around waiting. Well, I'll tell you what, one of these days when they ask me to do something, then I'm going to do something. Well, what's in your heart? Go put your hand on something. The door isn't going to open until you put your hand on the doorknob and turn it. You can stand there all day long and say, God, when it's your will, that door will open. No, it won't ever open. It won't ever open. And in 2 years, you'll be standing in the same spot you're at, looking at that door. Put your hand on something. Whatever your hands find to do, the Bible says, do it with all your might. It may seem small. It may seem insignificant, but it's available to your hand. It's what, as he said to Moses, what's in your hand? And what he had in his hand seemed insignificant. It seemed like this is just a stick. This is all I got. And a lot of you say, well, I ain't going through that door. That's nothing. That's just working with parking lot stuff. And I'll use this in reference to church because people want to be used at church. Well, I'm not going to stand out there and just be a greeter. I'm more than that. I've heard people make the statement that, we talk to them about contacting someone, and they say, I'm above that. I've got, that's kind of below my grade level. Can I say this to you? There's nothing below your grade level. There's nothing. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's running out on a rainy day with an umbrella and helping people get from their car to the auditorium. That should be something that burns in you, that you're just saying, look, man, this is in my heart. I have concern for you. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to help you get where you are, okay? So he said there, it was in the heart of Titus, the same concern. He said, for Titus, verse 17, not only welcomed our appeal, but he's coming to you with much enthusiasm on his own initiative. I mean, I'm not having to pump him along. It's so refreshing to have Titus, because you're not having to breathe air into him every 3 minutes. You're not having to go, where in the world is Titus? I wonder what happened to him. Now, Titus, he's welcomed what's going on, and he's coming with enthusiasm. I love it when people come with enthusiasm of their own initiative. I don't have to pump them up. I mean, this is something that's important to them. And he said, verse 18, and we're sending along with him the brother. I know, and I'm not sure who the brother is that he's talking about. It could have been Apollos, could have been Luke, it could have been Silas. I'm not sure who it was. But he said, we're sending along with him the brother who is praised by all the churches for his service to the gospel. Verse 19 said, and what's more, he, the brother, was chosen by the churches to accompany us as we carry the offering which we administer in order to honor the Lord himself and to show our eagerness to help. Verse 20 says, we want to avoid any criticism of the way we administer this liberal gift, because there was a lot of people that were saying, well, Paul's just taking a bunch of money for himself. He's skimming off the top of that. And he's saying, this isn't true, guys. We want this thing to be handled properly, because those people are in trouble, and I'm trying to get you to respond, and I want to have enough people around me that can verify that we're not stealing this, okay? And verse 27 says, well, we're taking great pains to do what's right, and not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of man. And listen, that is very important. Now, he's speaking of this concerning the way this money is being handled. And boy, I'll tell you what, that's a big deal, the way money is handled in church. And I'll tell you the truth, I don't have anything to do with it myself. I don't touch the money. I don't count it. I'm not even sure how much we have. You might say that's bad stewardship. No, my gift is elsewhere. I'm not going to allow myself to be judged in the eyes of anyone if I can keep from it. You know, I want to do what's right in the eyes of the Lord, but it's important for me, for the people, to also be comfortable with the fact that I'm right in their eyes. And with money, boy, that seems to be such a case. So I'm not in that mix, and I think it's important for you. The Bible says this. It says, don't let your good be evil spoken of. Whatever measures that you need to take, you might say, well, it doesn't matter what people think. No, it really does. It really does. And that's what Paul was saying this here. He said, we're taking great pains to do what's right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of man. It's important what they think. You know why? Because they're important to Christ. And I don't want anything that I do to ever be a stumbling block to them. I don't ever want it to be said, you know, you just can't ever tell about Edmund if you can trust him or not. I don't want that. I don't want that. I want to be a blessing and not a curse. So he said in verse 22, he said, in addition, he said, we're sending with them our brother who has often proved to us in many ways that he is zealous, and now even more so because of his great confidence in you. In verse 23, he said, as for Titus, he's my partner, man. He's my co-worker among you. As for our brothers, they are representatives of the churches and an honor to Christ. Therefore, show these men the proof of your love and the reason for our pride in you, so that the churches can see it also. Wow. Pretty impressive chapter, it really is. Paul has been bragging on the Corinthians about the he'd been bragged to the Corinthians about the Macedonians, and he's saying, look, guys, make me look good here. We're sending these guys to collect this thing. I've been bragging about you guys all along. Let's not drop the ball here in the 11th hour. Let's complete what we've got. We're going to do this, and it's going to be a blessing to somebody. All right, that is chapter 8. Now, in the next chapter, we'll complete where he's going to continue talking about this very thing. of dealing with the offerings to go to the poor that are the churches in Jerusalem. And I think it'll be a great life lesson for you. Okay? Thank you for joining me today. If you would mind, please leave me a note. I would appreciate that. Just push like, push share, or anything else you can see there. And just let me know what you think. You can go to my website, jerryedmond.com, and we've got a lot of resources there that'll be a blessing to you. If there's anything, listen, if there's anything you would like to see in our website, let me know, because I would like to keep it modified based on what the needs are for you. And we've got an abundance of resources. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate that, you taking the time. I appreciate your love. I appreciate your friendship. And matter of fact, I just want to say thank you for being my friend. And I really mean that. Thank you. I love you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next chapter. Bye-bye.